Too often, things that are difficult to find a simple explanation for are caught on camera. Glowing spheres, dark disks, giant triangles, and objects that hover over cities, airports, and roads, without sound, without a trace, and without understandable logic. The most alarming thing is that this is not one case, and not one country. And the more of these frames appear, the more difficult it is to pretend that nothing is happening in the sky. Today on Top Facts, a 2-hour compilation of the most alarming and inexplicable frames caught on camera is waiting for you. Watch until the end, and I wish everyone a pleasant viewing. Let us begin with a video that is recorded by a passenger of an airplane on the territory of Great Britain. His attention was drawn to a gleam in the air, and here the miracles began. A cigar in the sky began to change position so quickly as if it was not flying but teleporting. Try to explain. Up close, the object seems transparent, but during movement, we see a cylinder. How is this even possible? I would like to hear a couple of words about this from official sources. We cannot deny. One more piece of evidence. This time from Spain, perhaps. This is the clearest image of a cigar-shaped, unidentified flying object. After a multitude of reports about a similar flying object, one patient seeker finally managed to capture it. Just look at how it is constructed. Now we can debunk the idea about hoaxes. Such objects have appeared many times in various corners of the planet. The cylinder spent several minutes in front of the camera and began to descend vertically. In the most interesting place, the video cuts off. But we have already received enough evidence, have we not? This video was filmed in the year 2020 over Hungary before the appearance of neural networks. Thanks to the high-quality cameras of several drones, we can trace the journey of the flying object of a cylindrical shape. The size, color, and configuration allow us to state that this is not a gadget, and not a flying apparatus of earthly origin. Any equipment leaves behind a trail of spent fuel, but this cigar flew absolutely cleanly and soundlessly. And like in a good movie, it developed a fantastic speed, sharply changed its trajectory, and disappeared from sight. Indeed, let us think. What must the speed be in order to overcome the distances between galaxies? Another video clip, filmed by a passenger during a flight, tells a calmer story, but for some reason it looks even more alarming. This time, the eyewitness did not advertise that he saw an unidentified object next to the airplane, but simply continued to film. Right below them, a massive saucer-shaped ship was moving measuredly. It did not attack, did not rush, but simply accompanied, keeping the pace. Later on the network, the attention of many viewers was attracted not only by the video itself, but also by its analysis. Experts verified the material and did not find any inconsistencies. Reflections, angles, lighting, everything matched. The absence of signs of manipulation leaves us with one unpleasant possibility. Everything is true. After viewing such video clips, a frightening question arises. What if we are being kept in the dark, and a connection between the American military and extraterrestrial activity really exists? And then it becomes logical why in official sources it is not customary to raise the topic of unidentified flying objects. At the beginning of the year 2024, a quiet recording from a field turned into something much larger than expected. A man calmly filming the pink sky before dawn suddenly caught in his camera a huge object that seemed to appear from nowhere. But this is not the most frightening thing in the subject. The object was followed by an entire escort. A multitude of jet airplanes and helicopters were moving in formation, as if they were leading an alien. This entire scene looked coordinated, as if this was happening not for the first time. Think about why several circumstances converge in the majority of subjects. An unidentified flying object more often appears at night or before dawn, and tries not to linger for long if it feels observation. At the beginning of the year 2026 in Portugal, a man woke up at about 5 o'clock in the morning from a strange sound. It was not loud, but absolutely exactly wrong. The person walked to the window, still half asleep, and was dumbfounded. Outside, something massive hovered low. There, it slowly began to rise into the dim morning sky. A flying saucer, at the bottom of which strange symbols brightly glowed. distinct enough to notice, but completely unfamiliar to understand. A few moments later, shortly before the sunrise, the unidentified flying object disappeared, as if it did not want to remain in sight for long. In the year 2021, somewhere in the desert expanses of Nevada, there happened to be a person who turned on the camera in time. And this is how we learned what was happening there. A dark, V-shaped flying apparatus silently glided through the sunset. No traces of fuel in the sky, no noise, only smooth movement. The unidentified flying object did not dart around and did not hurry, but swam, as if the entire sky belonged to it. Anyone who saw this for the first time would fall into a stupor, and our eyewitness, exactly similarly, just stood, trying to understand what was in front of him. There will be those who will assume that this is some kind of top-secret technology unavailable to the public, and someone will straightforwardly declare, "Stop looking for excuses. These are simply extraterrestrials who know what they are doing here." A driver on the highway took his eyes off the road and noticed something extraneous in the sky. There, to his amazement, hung a motionless, massive dark disk. Not having the opportunity to stop, the man grabbed his phone and began recording on the go. The video turned out shaking, but clear enough to see a strange silhouette. Then again, something unexpected happened. From the bottom of the disk, another object detached, a light one, similar to a parachute, and began to slowly descend, as if it was being lowered intentionally. This moment changed everything, because the phenomenon no longer seemed like an illusion. Rather, it felt like a process that had a clear goal. On the 19th of March, 2025, not far from Nashville, a man raised his head to the sky and thought that he saw a large cloud. But something in it was not right. Its shape was too clear, structured, like a perfect part of a disk. Moreover, blue lights emerged from it, which simply glowed from above without movement. That is when it ceased to seem like a cloud. Remember, people observed something similar in China during the day. I also said that it resembles a Ferris wheel. This strange cloud simply hung there, not changing its position. Ordinary clouds would have moved a long time ago. And the more people watched this clip, the more remarks they left. Someone clearly wanted to hide in this cloud. In a crowded square in Japan, all the people as one suddenly froze and looked up and took out their phones. A huge saucer-shaped object was slowly rotating above them. It did not rush and did not dart across the sky, but calmly remained in place, as if communicating, "Yes, you see us, and this is reality." The video on the network underwent stormy discussion. Someone said that this could well have been Japanese advanced technologies, possibly experimental. But when even local experts could not match the object with any other flying apparatus known to science, and official faces ignored the fact of the appearance of an unidentified flying object in a crowded place, something else hung in the air: uncertainty. Some people violate the boundaries of the permitted and sometimes see what they should not have. However, this does not go without consequences. Many are interested in the anomalous Area 51, and this curious man did not become an exception. He launched his drone into territory where filming and the presence of outsiders is forbidden. At first, nothing happened. Then suddenly, this appeared: a huge dark object in the shape of a donut. It hovered low and cast a massive shadow, and, what is surprising, almost did not move, simply remained in place, as if guarding something. The video clip naturally became viral on the internet, but shortly after uploading, the author of the content disappeared, and these frames are everything that now remains from that story. In the Chilean city of Osorno, at the end of the year 2023, people also noticed something strange in the sky. At first glance, it looked like a cloud, but it was too perfect. Its smooth edges and distinct shape resembled a large saucer lying upside down. And unlike a cloud that floats and mutates, this saucer remained in one place without changing its shape. Some even claimed as if they noticed how it slowly rotates. Others said that they heard a faint sound emanating from it. Officially, this can be explained as a rare, natural phenomenon, a perfect lenticular cloud. But what about the strangeness that it held its shape for so long and forced people to stop and examine it in surprise? How do you think? Is it really a cloud or someone's camouflage suit? In Idaho, a quiet night of the year 2024 took a strange turn for the author of this video. When his dogs would not stop barking, he went outside and noticed something hovering just above the tree line. A massive triangular apparatus slowly rotated in place. It did not drift, but exactly rotated, as if it was scanning the ground below. He began to film it on video while the apparatus continued its measured and purposeful movement. In the year 2023, a quiet trip to nature turned into a hunt for extraterrestrials. Along the way, a man noticed an object of a strange shape hovering over the road. Thinking that it was a balloon, he zoomed in on the image. But the more he increased the scale, the less he understood what it was. The construction looked rigid, mechanical, artificially created, almost engineering. And it did not float like a glider in a random manner, but held its position. In December of the year 2025, at the Juan Santa Maria International Airport in Costa Rica, something unusual happened in broad daylight. Next to the runway, a clearly distinguishable hovering object got into someone's camera. No blurry contours or distant distance, it was in close proximity to the airplanes. A week earlier, an air traffic controller had already mentioned strange observations from the tower. Even the radar fixed unusual activity, which was observed in this area for several hours. Therefore, when these frames appeared, no one doubted their authenticity. In Chile, on a quiet street at night, an unusual noise sounded. The strange thing was that it came from the sky. It woke up a woman who filmed this subject. She went outside with her phone and froze in place. What she saw had no explanation. A huge object hovered above her head, surrounded by something similar to a flame. It was not smoke or a reflection of a forest fire in a foggy sky, but a real, flickering, fire-like light that enveloped the unknown object. She stood shocked and tried to record a video as high quality as possible. Shortly after the woman shared this observation on the internet, new video clips with a similar object began to appear, but filmed in different places. Some tried to explain this as a natural phenomenon, possibly an atmospheric anomaly. But even you and I see that here is clearly not a natural physical event, but something uncharacteristic of earthly matters. A strange clip, filmed in the year 2025, shows not just a separate flying object, but some kind of interaction, the essence of which no one could explain. What we will see seems too precise to become an accidental optical illusion. A triangular flying apparatus slowly, purposefully moves across the sky, then hovers. Suddenly, from nowhere right above it, another one appears, smaller in size. For a moment, both unidentified flying objects hover, together, ideally aligning, and then approach and connect in the air, exactly like parts of a single whole. And in a few seconds, everything is already over. Faster than the sun at sunset, both objects disappear, as if they want to convince everyone that it really just seemed to us. On a quiet night in Kansas, a man was driving home when he suddenly noticed flickering glimpses of light above. At first they looked like distant lights until they began to slowly approach. Someone controlled their movement. The lights hovered in the sky above the car. The man took out his phone, trying to remain calm, while the fiery spheres drifted silently. Now, the main thing, after the video spread on the internet, other people started talking about observations of the same objects throughout the entire territory of the United States. The same lights, the same movements. And the conclusion: when something ceases to be a single isolated case, we no longer have the right to brush it off. Mysterious apparatuses are flying above us and doing something. But for some reason, there are still no official explanations. We have lived to the point that unidentified flying objects in our days no longer hide even in daylight. Two people were flying low over the fields in a small airplane and thought that the flight would become just a routine inspection of the surroundings. Suddenly, something below seemed suspicious to them. Right in the middle of the crops, a massive structure could be seen, too perfect to turn out to be a farm building and to generally be located there. The craziest thing happened a second later. The flying saucer simply dissolved into the air, disappeared without movement. The object seemed to merge with the plantings. It became absolutely invisible. And again, the observers saw only fields. Here is what is interesting. How do unidentified flying objects behave when they are discovered? Do they fly away so fast that our eye does not have time to notice? Or do they camouflage in the surrounding environment in a special way, while remaining in the same place? Let me know your considerations. As you can imagine for yourself, in those places where the landscape does not differ in a variety of colors, any unusual object immediately catches the eye. Of course, if it is not masquerading. In October of the year 2024 in Antarctica, members of an expedition noticed how something unusual is drifting among the clouds. At first glance, this looked like a part of the sky itself. A white, smooth disk almost merged with the surrounding environment. But the shape gave it away. An ideally round, too perfect flying item could hardly be a cloud. Then the eyewitnesses increased the scale of the filming, and the object appeared before them, motionless, observing the frozen landscape below. No reaction emanated from it, but people on the snow should have been visible from afar. A few minutes later, the unidentified flying object slowly hid behind a mountain and disappeared. The man filming the night sky did not expect anything supernatural, but this video did not become ordinary. A massive structure of extraterrestrial appearance slowly emerged from behind the clouds, with a glowing center that looked almost like a burning core. It hovered motionlessly, as if observing. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the structure hid behind another cloud and disappeared. The people who caught sight of this filming could not come to a single opinion about what they were seeing, but almost everyone convincingly called the object extraterrestrial space technologies. In the subjects about observations of unidentified flying objects, there is much in common. They appear from nowhere, do not make noise, move smoothly, do not like surveillance, although they themselves are engaged in this. But there are certain differences that concern not only the models of their constructions, but also the variance of departure from the field of vision of the observer. Somewhere in Nevada, a man observed how a huge saucer slowly moved across the sky, shifting from one place to another, as if scanning the ground below. It did not hurry, did not dart around, just observed. Then it stopped, hovered for a moment, and without warning, took off upwards, but not just into the sky. It looked as if it entered a doorway or a portal in the air, and then disappeared. Without fading, without a trace, it simply left empty space behind itself. We would never have taken an interest in someone's trip along a long Texas highway if it had not taken such an unexpected turn. Two people were driving in a car when one of them looked outside and froze. Parallel to their movement, very close, there was a huge black object. It glided low over the ground, as if not wanting to be noticed. The object followed at a short distance from them for some time, and then slowly moved away. On the network, people are actively discussing why it avoided detection. Who do you think the unidentified flying object was hiding from at the altitude of car traffic? A couple of years ago, a man driving along a remote stretch of road stopped, having noticed something in the sky that he did not expect to see. There hung a dark triangle similar to an alien vessel. Underneath it, faint lights pulsed, giving it the same appearance that other eyewitnesses on the internet had already reported. It was conditionally named TR-3B. It is assumed that this object is the Black Manta, a hypothetical spy plane that was created within the framework of a secret development. It is often associated with observations of unidentified flying objects in the shape of black triangles. In May of the year 2024, a strange flying object was recorded in the sky above Tehran, which behaved completely differently than in similar cases earlier. Its movement could be called smooth, controlled, almost deliberate. And one more circumstance distinguished this episode from the rest. The object emitted a sound, which, according to eyewitnesses, did not match with any known flying apparatus. An expert ufologist, having reviewed the recording, declared that this soundtrack was not similar to an accompaniment, artificially created in a sound recording studio, which only added oil to the fire of speculations. In the year 2025, a regular passenger flight turned into chaos. When the airplane rose into the air, the passengers began to notice something strange outside the window. A huge object in the shape of a saucer was moving next to them. It was too close for anyone to feel comfortable. Panic quickly began in the cabin. In a matter of seconds, everyone started screaming, pointing fingers, and trying to comprehend what they saw. Someone managed to record this, but the video abruptly ends. According to the person who uploaded it to the network, the situation on board abruptly became serious. Everyone was ordered to stop filming without explanation and to observe silence. And it is exactly this silence that ultimately spawned more questions than the observation itself. This video was filmed in Russia in the year 2023, when a master for the repair of wind turbines became a witness to something that is hard to believe in. He tore himself away from work and with horror saw how a huge flying saucer drifted very close, dangerously descending near the structures. The most interesting thing is that the unidentified flying object was descending towards a specific hidden place nearby. It did not fall and did not attack, but simply parked, habitually as if it knew exactly where it was heading. The second notable fact, later the mechanic declared that afterwards he became a witness to subsequent arrivals as well. If so, then the unidentified flying object was returning to a familiar shelter. The clip becomes viral after millions of people forward the video with the question, "What was that?" And until now, no one has answered what the vacationers on the beach saw. They noticed a massive round structure hovering in the sky, and unlike videos with flying saucers or spheres, this object did not look like a typical representation of an unidentified flying object. Rather, the construction that appeared in the sky resembled a giant Ferris wheel with unusual luminescent illumination. This object did not move chaotically and did not disappear with lightning speed. It simply remained in immobility, silent, like an obsession. This time, it did not hide, but tried to be seen. People zoomed in on the image, analyzed the frames, and to their surprise, did not find any obvious signs of montage in the video clip, which only aggravated the riddle. This unidentified flying object was observed in the sky above the Colombian city of Medellin. People noticed something jagged in the sky, hovering just above the ground, low enough to distinguish its shape. It was not a typical flying saucer. The object had a strange patterned shape that did not look like our flying vehicles. Rather, it was too elaborate to look functional. Crowds gathered, some were recording video, others simply froze in place, as if they were waiting for something. And, honestly speaking, it also seemed that something was just about to happen. But the mysterious object disappeared without a single sound, simply vanished. However, the general tension remained even after the sky emptied again. I suppose that a real expanse for visits by extraterrestrials arrived during the times of the pandemic, when the chances of running into an accidental observer were maximally reduced. Nevertheless, this encounter happened in the year 2020 in Camden, when due to the quarantine the streets were unusually quiet, but something else besides the virus seized the sky. A huge black object quietly hovered over it, as if it was waiting for something. The few people noticed it and filmed it on video. Everyone was puzzled by its calm appearance, as if it was intentional. The object did not hide, but observed. I think it is not pleasant for anyone to realize that they are being kept under observation without any explanations. On the 28th of January, 2025, in the Irish city of Dundalk, a quiet evening near the local park was broken by the shouts of a young man who noticed a strange object in the sky. He called his friend and excitedly shouted that he absolutely must also see this. He wanted to show him a spaceship hovering motionlessly in the air. It, unlike the guy, did not make a sound, but only glowed with red and green lights, which, perhaps, were too bright to ignore such a light. You can distinguish in the voice of the eyewitness that he experienced pure shock. The unidentified flying object hovered at a close enough distance to feel its reality. And for a moment, everything else just ceased to matter. And how would you behave in his place? In the harsh landscapes of the canyons of Arizona, a lone tourist captured something atypical for the contemplation of nature. A saucer-shaped object quietly hovered in the air and then began to move along the canyon, as if it knew exactly where it was heading. It drifted from one side to the other, almost like a patrol, inspecting the area. The tourist continued to film until the unknown object finally disappeared from sight behind the rocks. How do you like this subject? Did it not seem that the unidentified flying object feels almost like at home, and its appearance here cannot be called accidental? This is not the first episode of observing an unidentified flying object in the Kenzan Mountains, which are called the Japanese Alps. Something unusual again appeared here in the year 2024. Tourists were filming the landscape and suddenly discovered huge objects hovering in the sky. But the most frightening thing was the realization that now in front of them were not tiny lights, but huge, real flying ships that were impossible not to notice. What is interesting, the local residents were not strongly surprised because they had seen similar strange things there before. But even they admitted that these structures were much larger and clearer. As we found out, unidentified flying objects skillfully use the light of the sun, the moon, and the shadows of clouds to hide from us. In the year 2020 in Portugal, two men exited a store and paid attention to the unnaturally bright light around. The illumination seemed frighteningly strange. Raising their eyes, they understood why. A huge object hung in the sky, partially covering the sun. It was not completely visible, as if it was exactly trying to hide against its background, but its outlines were enough to understand. This is not a cloud. Eyewitnesses took out their phones while the dark figure silently hovered. This is an event from the end of the year, 2024, and no one knows exactly where the clip was filmed. A group of workers in reflective clothing suddenly stops and begins to point at something in the sky. It is too small to catch the eye, but the reaction that the object causes is the same for everyone: stupor and shock. The workers immediately take out their phones and begin to record the flying object, I understand, so that you and I got an episode from the phone of only one eyewitness. The strange thing is that the experts who reviewed the video recordings did not find any signs of montage or digital processing. It happens so that a premonition prompts people about the presence of suspicious strangers. Animals, however, are much more sensitive in this regard. On a quiet farm, the owner noticed how his dog ran towards the trees and suddenly rushed back. It panicked, as if it had encountered something invisible. Then he looked in that direction and saw a disc-shaped object hanging low above the ground, completely motionless. He raised the camera, zooming in on the image, and its dimensions amazed him. It was a huge, silent observer that did not move. And suddenly the object reacted, as if it understood that it had been noticed. In a fraction of a second, the disc soared upwards and disappeared without a sound and a trace. And this is a completely fresh video. Obeying the same uncomfortable feeling that there is something in the sky, people looked upwards and saw something. A gigantic round object froze in the sky, not moving, not making a sound, simply hung there like an artificial moon, as if it was specially placed there. No blinking lights, no movement, but its very silent presence pumped up anxiety. There were those who took the object for a balloon. But as soon as eyewitnesses zoomed in on the image, it immediately became clear that it does not work out to explain. The structure and behavior of the object, everything seemed strange. And the longer it remained there, the more it seemed that the ship was not simply hovering, but waiting. This subject is a little older than other clips. Presumably, it was filmed at the beginning of the 2000s. A man standing on a quiet beach suddenly paid attention to something glowing. A bright disk appeared in the sky, but it did not smoothly hover, but moved unevenly, almost unstably, as if it was trying with all its might to hold on. The light emanating from it seemed intensive, unnatural. The eyewitness continued to film while the disk descended. It even seemed to the man that it could fall. And then the clip abruptly ended, and we never found out where the story concluded. Whether the unidentified flying object soared into the sky or crashed in the wilderness. What if alien ships can also get into an accident? Technical malfunctions are an everyday matter, is that not right? Near the Appalachian mountain range, a video was filmed that caused anxiety among many. A massive saucer-shaped object silently hovered in the sky, almost not moving. Then spheres slowly began to appear and descend from it. But the real horror happened later. The larger apparatus did not fly away. It stayed, only now it looked different. Before the eyes of the amazed observers, it began to merge with the sky, dissolving into it, as if it was becoming transparent. This maneuver amazed everyone. How many alien ships can apply such camouflage to remain unnoticed right in our sight? On the 5th of March, 2026, residents of Spain witnessed an atypical incident in the sky. Something appeared there that should not have been there according to our concepts. At first, it looked like a weather anomaly, until a massive dark object appeared from the clouds, which held its position for more than 2 minutes. It flickered with faint lights, as if it was trying with all its might to camouflage itself. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it disappeared into the clouds. An evening in a quiet town in Michigan once turned into an episode from a science fiction movie. A local resident went outside and noticed something massive in the shape of a disc in the sky. It was flying low, too low to be something customary. But the matter was not only in the size. Around the main disc, he saw rings that slowly rotated, like some kind of mechanism. The eyewitness began to record a video, himself trying to understand what this was. But after a few seconds, everything lit up and disappeared as if it fell into a hole in space. In the year 1981, a person named Carlos Diaz captured something extraordinary, not far from his farmhouse in Mexico. A glowing object appeared in the sky, bright as the moon, but it was moving quite fast. The man grabbed his camera and began to film, and at that moment, the object hovered in one place, steadily and silently, and then suddenly changed direction, as if it moved to another dimension. Experts carefully studied this video recording, but did not notice any traces of computer tricks or montage. Simply sometimes we encounter something that looks too strange to be placed into customary frames. In February of the year 2026, a regular drive along the highway turned into a frightening escort. A group of local residents caught on video a massive disc-shaped object hovering quite low near the side of the road. It emitted a faint green glow and remained completely motionless, as if it was studying the movement of transport. What seemed more alarming was that this was not the first fact of its presence here. Earlier frames from the year 2025 were also found, where you can see a similar object flying just above the ground level. The unidentified flying object moved as if it intentionally avoided excessive attention. One more subject from territories that cannot be called densely populated. In September of the year 2020, far in the mountains of Alaska, a group of tourists captured something they did not expect to encounter. In the silence above them appeared an object in the shape of a saucer or disc. It smoothly glided, as if earthly laws of physics did not influence it. No noise or sharp movements. It moved across the sky the way reality usually looks in a dream. And when they managed to film it a little on video, the object disappeared just as quickly as it appeared. This topic is quite relevant. There have always existed speculations about a connection between the Egyptian pyramids and extraterrestrials, and this viral clip only fueled the interest. Next to the Great Pyramid of Giza, a driver captured something that did not seem like an accident or a desert mirage at all. A bright light hovered right above the top of the pyramid. It was stable, as if someone was controlling it. Then the light suddenly soared upwards, divided into 2 lights, then into 3, then into a larger quantity, and within a few seconds, a multitude of glowing spheres scattered across the sky, as if following some pattern. In different cities of Texas, people filmed light shapes resembling either cracks or waves or cuts in the sky itself. They appeared briefly, but looked as if another layer was emerging through the darkness. Not a light source, but exactly the border of something else. A single video can always be attributed to an angle, an artifact, an atmospheric effect. But when something similar is seen at different points, the story ceases to be just a private impression. Over Denver, eyewitnesses noticed a powerful light beam, as if breaking downward from the clouds. And inside this column of light, a dark figure or object could be guessed. By itself, the beam already looked unusual, but it was exactly the dark insert in the middle that turned the picture into a real visual hook. Human perception is structured in such a way that we instantly cling to a contrast, brightness around and an unknown dense shape inside. And when this happens not in a feature film, but in the real sky, the frame begins to work almost at the level of a dream. You're not entirely sure what you saw, but the feeling of anxiety is absolutely real at the same time. Stories about triangular crafts have been appearing for many years, but they always frighten for one reason. Such a shape is too recognizable and too purposeful to be perceived as a natural accident. People from different states filmed dark triangular objects that hung quietly, moved smoothly, and did not give the impression of ordinary equipment. A person expects to hear any large craft earlier than to see it. But when something massive turns out to be almost noiseless, the fear becomes much deeper, because sound gives a feeling of the physical world. And the absence of sound from something large and close gives rise to a feeling of a violation of the very rules of presence. Over Florida, a long whitish trail passed through the sky, and on one of its sections, the camera recorded a shape that resembled a head or a profile. Usually, they try to explain such phenomena by the launch of a rocket or an atmospheric trace. But what catches the viewers is not the trail itself, but precisely this figure inside it, because the trace can be taken for physics, and the silhouette already for a message. This is the power of such footage. They provide a sufficiently realistic foundation to believe, and a sufficiently strange detail to begin to doubt. During a flight above the clouds, one passenger noticed in the window not just light, but something similar to an opened portal. A bright ring flashed in the thickness of the clouds, and short energetic impulses seemed to burst out of its center, striking the cloud layer below. All this lasted for a few minutes, but it looked as if the sky at a huge altitude suddenly ceased to be a background and became something active, almost alive. What is especially creepy here is that in the air, a person usually feels cut off from everything earthly. And if even there, at an altitude of tens of thousands of feet, something inexplicable appears behind the glass, there is simply nowhere to hide. During a night thunderstorm, lightning sometimes shows more than one would like to see. In Delaware, against the background of clouds, dark figures emerged for seconds. One resembled a walking silhouette, another looked like something with long, falling appendages. Rationally, a person understands that a thunderstorm knows how to create bizarre shapes, but there are frames where the coincidence looks frighteningly accurate. That is precisely why such videos leave a heavy aftertaste. They do not so much show an object as make you feel as if the face of something too big and too alien appeared in the sky for a second. In Australia, residents of a neighborhood woke up at night not only from the light, but also from a sound. Over the houses, the sky flashed so sharply and frequently, as if a giant faulty mechanism was working somewhere in the darkness. At first, many decided that the problem was in the wires or the transformer, but filming from another point showed the source is located higher, right in the clouds. The combination of light and hum is especially unnerving. When the sky does not just glow, but seems to answer with a loud, heavy crackle, the scene ceases to seem distant, it seems to descend to the earth, into the personal space of a person. There are phenomena that people perceive not as light and not as physics, but as an image. Over Idaho, a silhouette emerged in the clouds, resembling a human face with long hair. For some, it was just a play of light and shape. For others, something much more serious. Such footage almost always causes arguments, because an ancient human mechanism works here. We instinctively look for faces, even where there are none. But sometimes the resemblance turns out to be so strong that it is difficult for the mind to separate coincidence from a sign. And it is exactly on this border between psychology and mysticism that the most viral and the most disturbing stories are born. Late at night over Shanghai, a long white line stretched across the sky, and at one of its ends, bright clumps of light swirled, rotating with unusual speed. Upon approaching, strange irregularities became noticeable along the line itself, because of which it ceased to look like an ordinary beam or trail. In Vietnam, a man noticed an object in the sky that remarkably resembled a jellyfish in movement and shape. A translucent body, a rounded upper part, hanging structures below. Everything looked as if a marine creature somehow impossibly ended up not in the water, but in the air. It is precisely here that what is most terrifying is not the fact, but the association. We know perfectly well where such shapes should be located, and therefore the transfer to another environment is instantly perceived as an error of reality. In Norway, tourists, instead of a beautiful evening view, saw a flat, shiny object in the air, which hovered and slightly changed its angle, as if balancing on an invisible support. It had no visible wings, a jet trail, or signs of habitual flight, but it had a trait very unpleasant for perception: a too clean shape. When an object looks like a perfectly assembled metal part, a person almost automatically reads an artificial origin in it. And then a completely different chain of questions is launched. Not, what kind of cloud is this? But, who made this? And why is it here? Not far from an industrial zone on the Space Coast, a worker noticed above him a round, flat object that did not reflect light, but seemed to be its source itself. It moved smoothly and without jerks, leaving a feeling of controlled gliding and not flying in the usual sense. The repeatability gives special weight to this story. The eyewitness claimed that he had seen something similar, not for the first time, and at approximately the same time. And that is when a single strange case turns into something stickier, because one inexplicable episode can be attributed to an error of perception. But when the phenomenon returns, a completely different conversation begins. In Texas, eyewitnesses raised their heads and saw not clouds, but what looked like a huge funnel rolled right out of light. The clouds twisted into a dense mass, purple and green iridescences flashed along the edges, and a shining core emerged in the center, as if the sky had opened up something hidden inside for a second. But the most alarming part began later. The brightness began to fade, and a thick, dark shape grew in its place. It slowly swallowed the glow entirely, as if someone had drawn a curtain. During a night thunderstorm in Thailand, a camera caught an instant that could otherwise be attributed to a trick of the imagination. A flash of lightning for a fraction of a second illuminated a strange pattern in the sky, as if a giant glowing crack passed through the darkness. It resembled neither a discharge nor a cloud, but broken glass, behind which another layer of reality seemed to be hidden. It is precisely this association that catches, when the sky suddenly looks not like a space, but like a surface that can be split. And even if the phenomenon lasted a very short time, sometimes one such frame is enough so that the familiar view of the world no longer returns to its previous state. During the day in Idaho, a camera caught a strange object of clear angles and sharp edges, while it looked translucent, as if it was simultaneously both in the air and beyond its limits. In such footage, what catches the viewer is not simply the unusualness of the shape, but the impossibility of reading it correctly. An airplane is understandable, a balloon is understandable, a drone is understandable. But when an object consists of geometry that does not add up to a familiar silhouette, the brain literally begins to stumble. And if a feeling of camouflage is added to this, the effect becomes almost fantastic. On one cloudy night over Vancouver, a bright green stripe appeared, as if a giant light source was suddenly turned on behind dense clouds. It stretched out, changed shape, shifted with frightening speed, and every gap between the clouds only added to the mystery. People did not see the phenomenon entirely, but even fragmentary pieces were enough to understand. This does not look like ordinary lightning, does not look like an airplane, and does not resemble the familiar northern lights. An ordinary thunderstorm frightens in a familiar way, but in Dallas, the lightning suddenly behaved as if it had forgotten its own nature. Instead of the usual strike from top to bottom, the flash tore across the sky almost strictly horizontally, drawing through the darkness like a red-hot crack. Then one single discharge grew so much that it illuminated the entire firmament and hung for a few seconds, turning the night into an unnaturally bright scene. In the video, this looks especially disturbing. The viewer understands that a thunderstorm seems to be in front of them, but intuitively feels that something in this movement is going wrong. Over Dubai at night, two bright, fiery objects appeared, which did not fall, did not burn up, and did not behave like meteors. Instead, they moved synchronously, as if circling around each other along a preset trajectory. In such a scene, precision is frightening. Natural phenomena are often chaotic, but here everything looked too even, too coordinated, too neat. Moreover, the objects left behind a light, smoky trail, which only intensified the feeling of the materiality of what was happening. They did not break down and did not dissolve gradually. They simply disappeared. Sometimes it is not the light that frightens, but the geometry. Over Oklahoma, people noticed a strange grid of intersecting trails in the sky, as if someone had stretched a giant transparent lattice over the city. From the ground, it did not look like ordinary contrails from airplanes, but like a too neat, almost drafting drawing. The lines diverged, splintered into squares, and the longer they looked at this, the stronger the feeling arose, as if not a natural pattern, but a diagram had appeared over their heads. And when the sky suddenly begins to look like markings, people inevitably have the exact same question. Is this an accident or someone's calculation? There are phenomena that seem not natural but almost digital. Over Oklahoma, people saw an even bluish grid under the clouds, as if an electrical framework emerged in the air for a second. It would disappear, then manifest again, as if someone could not hold the image stable. The strongest impression here is made not by the color and not even the shape, but the feeling of a glitch, as if the surrounding world suddenly for a moment showed its internal markup. Such moments hit the psyche especially well, because a person is afraid not only of the unknown, but also of the thought that the familiar reality might turn out to be arranged completely differently than it seems to us. In California, a man was returning home and saw an accumulation of orange light in the clouds, as if glowing embers were suspended right in the clouds. It was not isolated lights or a flash, but a dense, fiery group that was in no hurry to disappear and hung in the sky for so long that anxiety had time to be replaced by stupor. Similar footage always has a strange effect. The brain looks for a familiar explanation: lanterns, fireworks, a reflection. But the shape is too alive, too heavy for an ordinary version. And the longer the object remains in place, the stronger the feeling that you are not observing a random light effect, but something that is intentionally present in the sky. Sometimes the camera catches neither light nor an object, but a shape that should not exist in the sky at all. On one of the videos, something resembling a translucent creature with tentacles is visible, which does not fly, but rather swims through the air, like a marine animal in the water. And this is exactly what confuses the most. We are ready for lights, spheres, trails, even for strange silhouettes of equipment. But when a phenomenon begins to resemble a living creature, a completely different level of the familiar picture of the world is disrupted. In Nevada, A man filmed a dark object with a flat hull, which was not flying but seemed to hang in the air, ignoring the familiar rules of aerodynamics. Neither wings nor propellers, nor noticeable movement that could explain the lift. In such cases, what strikes you is not the spectacularity, but the silence of logic. The familiar world seems to run out of clues. You look at the object and understand that you cannot even begin to explain it, because it does not fit into the very first basic scheme. Over Santiago, people saw an object that was noticeable mainly by lights, as if the hull itself was hiding in the darkness or camouflaging itself. At some point, it gave such a powerful beam downwards that a whole section of the city instantly drowned in white light. This is one of the most cinematic types of observations, because a motive of action appears here. The object does not just hang and does not just glow, it seems to do something directed, and a person perceives any directed action as an intention. On one of the strangest videos in the sky, a luminous halo with a white center is visible, which does not remain unchanged, but seems to live its own life. Small light dots go down from it, and then these dots themselves turn into semblances of new rings. The picture produces a creepy impression precisely because of the idea of reproduction. An ordinary anomaly frightens as an isolated case, but here, a feeling of a process arises that is capable of spreading. And even if the viewer does not believe in any mystical versions, the visual image itself works flawlessly. Something big creates something similar to itself, and this is already one of the deepest human triggers of anxiety. And perhaps one of the strongest episodes is the sky over Perth, where the clouds first began to flash red from the inside, and then 3 light stripes stretched down from this scarlet mass. They looked neither like lightning nor like illumination, because they held too evenly and too long. And one of the stripes additionally shifted over the city, as if searching for a direction. An alarming color, clear geometry, duration, and movement. This is no longer just a beautiful or scary frame. This is a scene that feels like an event. And exactly such moments make the sky the strongest screen in the world. When it shows something strange, it is almost impossible to turn away. In Los Angeles, an observer initially decided that he was seeing meteors, but the longer he looked, the clearer it became. This was something else. The glowing stripes moved too slowly, changed shades, and illuminated the clouds, as if the source was not somewhere far away in space, but was working right here, within the visible layer of the sky. Over Florida, drivers noticed a dark ring in the night sky, behind which a long, almost endless trail trailed. The ring itself looked as if it was not formed in the air, but was placed there as an already finished object. And this tale only intensified the feeling of movement, which no one could trace to the beginning or to the end. One simple thing works here. A circle is too perfect a shape for random fear. When something closed, clear, almost drawn arises in the sky, a person automatically begins to perceive this not as a cloud, but as a sign. And the longer they look at it, the stronger the internal feeling grows that this is something addressed. Over New York. Late in the evening, the entire sky suddenly turned a thick orange color. This was not a local glow, but a real flooding of the horizon, so powerful that the familiar landmarks of the night disappeared. The moon, the stars, the depth of space. The city seemed to be under a dome of red-hot light, and in the air, according to eyewitnesses, a strange heat and tension were felt. Similar scenes frighten because they change not one object, but the whole world at once. If one fire appears in the sky, a person looks at it. But when the sky itself becomes this fire, there is nowhere to look. You are, as it were, inside the phenomenon. In Florida, people saw not one luminary on the horizon in the morning, but several bright spheres at once. Some were orange, others were blindingly white, and a part of them seemed to pulsate, either intensifying the light or sharply throwing it off. The most unpleasant thing in such a picture is not even the extra objects, but the loss of orientation. If there are several suns in the sky at once, then which of them is real? And when the very main point of the day ceases to be obvious, An almost primal anxiety arises. A doorbell camera in Arizona recorded an object that appeared in the frame as a huge white sphere, almost devoid of details due to its own brightness. It moved across the sky not in a jerk and not in a fall, but confidently, as if it perfectly knew the route. An especially strong effect is created by the domestic setting. This is not an observation deck, not a field, not a mountain peak, but an ordinary residential area where people expect familiar things: a car, a passerby, a neighbor. And it is exactly into such a familiar frame that something that looks like a concentrate of light suddenly enters. Long, elongated objects have featured in the stories of eyewitnesses for decades, but stories are one thing and a video is another. In Minneapolis, they managed to film an oblong object that moved slowly and smoothly, without signs of falling or being carried away in gusts by the wind. It looked neither like an ordinary airplane, nor like a balloon, nor like a random item in the frame. The power of such episodes is that they do not press with special effects. There are no flashes and noise here. There is only shape and behavior, which are enough for us to start mentally going through the options and discover not a single familiar one fits into the picture completely. During an evening training session, bright orange spheres appeared over a football field, looking like slowly rising fiery clumps. For the teenagers, this looked not like a rare spectacle, but like an immediate threat. The objects were too noticeable, too alive, and too close to be treated calmly. Contrast creates an especially strong effect here. Just a second ago, an ordinary field, a ball, a familiar space. And then this space seems to cease to belong to a human. In Brazil, right before the new year, a luminous cross appeared over a city. It was not drawn by the beams of searchlights, did not tremble, did not crumble, but simply hung in the air, clear, bright, almost motionless. People were especially strongly affected by the moment of disappearance. The shape dissolved almost exactly at midnight, as if it was tied not only to a place, but also to time. Such footage almost always causes not an argument about physics, but an argument about meaning. For some, it is a sign; for others, an optical phenomenon; for still others, a rare coincidence. Sometimes the sky behaves as if extra dots simply appeared in it. Over Australia, people noticed several white spheres suspended in the air, too low and too calmly. They did not resemble drones, did not blink like equipment, and did not behave like random lights. The objects just hang, not doing anything spectacular. But this is exactly what frightens. A person almost expects them to break loose, fly apart, disappear with smoke. And they seem to be watching. In China, over an airport, eyewitnesses saw an elongated luminous object from which rays diverged, and several smaller lights kept nearby. One of the small spheres seemed to cruise between the others, as if performing some connecting function. This is no longer just something in the sky, but almost a system inside which each element behaves as if it knows its role. It is not surprising that what was happening then caused nervousness and even delayed flights. A person can accept strangeness as long as it is somewhere far away. But when it appears next to infrastructure related to security, the tension grows many times over. Sometimes not a flash arises in the sky, but a vertical, one from which you want to look away, but you cannot. Over Dubai, the clouds turned red, and a thick shimmering pillar of light appeared in the center of this crimson mass. It did not look like lightning. Too even, too dense. It held for too long. There was a feeling that a column of light had been lowered down from the depth of the sky, as if this was not a weather episode, but a certain process that has a direction and a purpose. And the longer the phenomenon lasted, the less it resembled an accident. In Jordan at dawn, bright arches of light rose above the horizon, resembling a giant rainbow, only not soft and natural, but hard, almost energetic. The phenomenon did not hang high in the clouds, but seemed to grow from below, from behind the line of the earth, and that is exactly why it looked not like an atmospheric halo, but like something coming out into the world. Before a person is not just an object, but an entire structure occupying half the sky. And at this moment, even the calmest viewers understand. Whatever it is, it looks too big for a private strangeness. Sometimes anxiety is born not from the shape, but from the combination of colors. In Colombia, an eyewitness filmed how a bright green light rapidly moved in the clouds, and then a second one appeared next to it, red, heavier, and more ominous in feeling. Together, they looked not like random reflections, but like something coordinated, as if two independent sources were working in the sky simultaneously. In Detroit, exactly at midnight, a circular composition of lights manifested in the sky, too orderly to seem like random illumination. The points of light formed an almost perfect contour, and for a short time those watching had the feeling as if a passage was either opening over the city or something hidden behind the darkness was descending. One observer filming the night sky noticed strange white dots that moved too fast and chaotically for stars. They seemed to swim in place, change trajectory, and for a second created the feeling that the night sky consists not of distant objects, but of a living layer where something is moving very close. Over Bogota, 4 bright sources of light emerged in the cloudy sky, located too evenly to seem like an accident. They did not move, did not change order, and did not flash chaotically. On the contrary, the whole scene gave the impression of a single structure hidden behind the cloud layer. What looked especially strange was that when the lights disappeared, the foggy mass itself over the city seemed to also begin to dissipate. Over the pyramids in Giza, eyewitnesses filmed strange geometric shapes that resembled inverted pyramids, quickly passing through the cloud layer. The coincidence of place and shape works almost perfectly here. It is one thing to see a triangle in the sky anywhere, and quite another to notice it precisely over those structures that for centuries have been surrounded by secrets, versions, and myths. In Saudi Arabia, a massive dark shape resembling a flat disc appeared over a city. It was framed along the edges by an orange glow, and the center was so dense that it seemed as if the light of the day was simply absorbed there. The scale causes special anxiety. This is not a small object at an altitude, but something that visually dominates the entire landscape. Even if you look for an earthly explanation, the emotion from this does not become weaker, because the human eye does not tolerate large, dark shapes in the sky well, especially if they look too even and too separate from the rest of the cloud pattern. We have testimonies about encounters with aliens that waited a long time in the archives. Let us look at materials that are older than our parents. This person by the name of Jose Padilla, in the distant year 1945, was a little boy. At that time, he with his friend became witnesses of an unforgettable event. Not far from San Antonio, in the state of New Mexico, only weeks after the end of the Second World War, the boys saw how a strange object, by shape similar to an avocado, crashed into the landscape. But the flying object did not become the most shocking part. Little creatures appeared from the fragments. They moved vertically, as if this was natural for them. Their figures resembled human ones, but by the character of movements, it clearly followed that they were not earthly humans. And only years later, this person decided to share his revelations in an interview. And now it has become known that the Department of Defense of the United States began an investigation of this incident. It is unlikely that anyone would have believed the children on their word. Probably, the proverb, "Everything has its own time," is true. These people were on a cruise when they noticed a strange flying apparatus hovering right above them. And again, the object hovered soundlessly. Only lights in the shape of a triangle reported about its presence. The situation was heating up, since the unidentified flying object did not react in any way to the crowd of observers below, as if their presence did not matter at all. According to the words of eyewitnesses, several calls were received in the 911 service, but they were recommended to ignore the occurrence. Well, considering the growing number of inexplicable observations, especially across the entire territory of the United States, possibly Now is not the time to look away from the terrifying truth. They are not afraid of us and are not hiding. A man was going out onto the street and suddenly saw a huge flying object above his house. Its dimensions and sudden appearance was a frightening surprise. Everything in the appearance of the unidentified flying object seemed alarming, but most of all, the silence disturbed. The object did not make a sound at all. For human perception, any flying device must make noise. Otherwise, how will it hold itself in the air? The absence of the sound of an engine is considered impossible for technologies created by a human. And if such means of transportation truly exist, then our technical innovations are simply a kindergarten in comparison with the achievements of these civilizations. If we cannot even guess how their saucers fly, then all the more, we will not be able to find out why they are visiting us. Let us look at what we can do against an invasion of aliens. Once late in the evening in New Jersey, a local resident was frightened by a noise on the street. He went out and met other alarmed people who were looking into the dark sky. A multicolored glowing object was approaching them. For a moment, fear and disbelief took the upper hand. Could this really be an unidentified flying object? In a desperate attempt to react somehow, the local resident snatched out a pistol and tried to shoot at it, but the object did not stop. It slowly and steadily drifted, disappearing in the distance. Is it worth laughing at the pointlessness of using earthly weapons against such technology? We should think about what encounters with unidentified flying objects are fraught with, and what can happen in the near future. In the sky above the United States, a local resident pointed his telephone into the night sky when he noticed in it 2 light spheres that were drifting in the air. The spheres slowly flew over his neighborhood. They moved not like satellites and did not blink like airplanes. But that which followed after this alarmed truly. On the recording, a military helicopter is distinctly visible, flying after the lights as if it was trying to track them. All 3 stably held together for some time. Later, the authorities confirmed that on that night, training exercises with a helicopter were being conducted, but official sources denied any information about the participation of 2 glowing objects in this procession. As you understand, this denial caused only more questions. After all, we do not like it when we are taken for idiots. True? On this video, a whole group of glowing spheres is shown, drifting across the night sky. Despite the fact that the frames were filmed from afar, the mysterious lights were distinctly visible. Soon after the publication of this video, another one appeared on the network, even more strange. At first, the spheres grouped together and moved as if they were connected. Then, without a warning, they scattered in the air, and the rays of their light flew apart in different directions. A few moments later, all the spheres slowly disappeared. Where did they direct themselves? And what is more important, why did they end up here at all? A geologist deviated from a hiking trail and stumbled upon an ingrown formation in a rock, which to the touch was not similar to an ordinary stone. A disc from an unknown material, it seems, merged with the stone many years ago. Its texture did not correspond to anything from that which this specialist studied earlier. In the end, he named the find a part of an alien ship. Possibly, the idea is not so far-fetched. The fact that we are only now speaking about aliens does not mean that they were not here long before our discoveries. It is logical to assume that these creatures could have visited the Earth millions of years ago. Even ancient civilizations, especially the Egyptians, were often attributed the possession of technologies that were ahead of their epoch. Is it possible that humans had a connection with extraterrestrial creatures? And this find could serve as a proof to that. A farmer from the Canadian province of Saskatchewan was working in the field with his oldest son when an interesting fragment appeared before their eyes. They did not guess what this was and how it ended up on their land. Thus, an ordinary working day turned into a strange discovery, which could not be left just like that without attention. Even if from afar, the object looked like garbage, but up close this was clearly something else. The fragment weighed almost 50 kilograms and had strong traces of burns. as if it survived a fire. The material included carbon fiber and aluminum honeycombs, which usually are not encountered on agricultural lands. Experts assumed that the piece could be fragments of a satellite that returned and crashed into the atmosphere of the Earth. By the way, earlier in the province of Saskatchewan, similar cases had already occurred, but the question still remained open. How did the fall of a satellite and such massive fragments go unnoticed? The second question about the material, the composite of carbon fiber, consisted of 3 layers. In the middle, aluminum honeycombs were discovered, and the outer part again was made out of composite carbon. Special services continued to lose secret frames. This time they leaked, presumably, from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Now we see that, which many call proof of the existence of a satellite, under the Gothic name Black Knight. Theories of conspiracy assert that this is not simply a satellite, but a space apparatus of extraterrestrial origin, which secretly rotates around the Earth along a circumpolar trajectory. According to the opinion of theorists, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration actively hides its existence and origin. While skeptics assert that this is only space garbage, experts on the research of unidentified flying objects pay attention to its unusual shape and strange orbit. All this leads to the thought about mysterious events, about which the public is not supposed to know. How do you think? Is it possible that a relic of alien technologies dwells in our sky? Or is here yet another case of the penetration of space garbage? These frames, filmed in the year 2004, show that which looks like a classic observation of an unidentified flying object. We see a spherical object with bright white lights, which rotates in the sky. But that which happened after the first publication of the video made the plot even more interesting. Someone shared in the comments a photograph of a similar observation. This detail leads to the thought that the person who filmed the unidentified flying object on camera was not the only witness on that day. And when several eyewitnesses report about one and the same thing, we can fight off the questions about what we actually saw as much as we want, or find the solution together. These frames were filmed by a former pilot of the United States Air Force, serving in the subdivision Liberty Wing at an aviation base in Great Britain. According to his story, a flying apparatus glowing with a red color suddenly appeared in the sky and hovered right above him. The unusual triangular shape immediately attracted his attention. Despite the fact that on the basis of these frames, it is difficult to prove anything. But after the video got onto the network, the story was enriched with details in the section of comments. One user asserted that he lives nearby and confirmed that he saw the same object. But, according to his words, in his observation, there was one significant difference. The unidentified flying object did not simply hover in the air, but transmitted a signal by the method of Morse code. When the message was translated, the result astounded everyone. In the message was signified extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial. And if this is the truth, maybe those who sent it did not intend to hide anymore? Possibly, they wanted the world to find out that they are here. This video recording was shared by a person who claimed that he lives not far from a secret military base of the United States. Supposedly, he was simply taking a walk when a strange movement attracted his attention. That which he captured looks like an undetermined flying apparatus or an unidentified flying object, which was trying to take off. Thus, there exists a theory that asserts that world superpowers on the sly strive to establish contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. And in order to understand the principles of their technologies, they began to build ships, imitations of the constructions of unidentified flying objects. If this theory is true even partially, then these frames could be not an observation of aliens, but a proof that the tests of our earthly saucers have already become a routine on secret testing grounds. Recently, these frames spread in the networks with viral rapidity. We see on them a glowing sphere that sweeps over the expanses of fields with incredible speed. The spherical object moves so fast that you immediately understand. This is not an ordinary airplane, and not even a supersonic fighter jet. They say that the video was recorded in a small town in Scotland, but the exact location is not disclosed. And, according to the opinion of some experts, this secrecy is not accidental. Active enthusiasts of the study of unidentified flying objects assert that over the last few months in this area, a multitude of similar observations have been recorded. This means that official persons are intentionally keeping the details silent. We can only assume that we see a rare atmospheric phenomenon, or this is someone else's advanced technology, but let us not deceive ourselves. Here is something completely different, do you agree? Whatever flashed in the frame, it was not noticed by the mass media. This video begins quite ordinarily. Some stone is lying on the road and is hindering the traffic. But after a few minutes, it became obvious that the stone is not quite ordinary, when several cars of the police department of New York arrived at the place at once. At first, the man who was filming the video thought that this was an art installation, but the reaction of the police officers made it clear the boulder presents a great interest for them. That which at first glance resembled a rock formation turned out to be a part of something bigger. The stone of unknown origin was all carved with a semblance of a relief drawing. It had a specific texture. And even if you call it simply a meteorite that fell here at night, the unusual appearance clearly betrays in it an alien from outer space. In the course of many years, rumors grew that Antarctica hides something more than simply ice. And this clip quite feeds this theory. On the frames filmed by researchers, a massive object in the shape of a saucer is visible, hovering low above the frozen landscape. It remains completely motionless, despite the strong wind, then emits a faint glow onto the icy surface below, as if it is scanning it or gathering samples. According to the words of a whole group of eyewitnesses, the object did not make any sounds at all. Soon it slowly rose upwards, backed up a little, and disappeared behind the white horizon. A man in Ohio captured something similar to a whole flotilla of unidentified flying objects. Unlike the previous observations of lonely ships, this incredible fleet moved across the sky as if a caravan. If we take into consideration the coordinated movement of several alien ships at once, it means they pursued an organized goal. They hovered, observing a specific place on the Earth and everyone who was located there. Then, just as fast as they appeared, they disappeared without a trace. People who do not want to believe will say that this is absolute nonsense. But similar observations continue to accumulate, and to ignore them is becoming all the more difficult. So, will we continue to brush them off, or will we discuss this? Pilots who were flying over the state of Oregon suddenly discovered that they became witnesses of an inexplicable phenomenon. One of them immediately contacted the Center of Air Traffic Control, and it was then that he found out that his message was not the only one. Apparently, everyone who happened to be in the sky noticed strange objects with bright red lights. They were maneuvering at an altitude of about 300 meters. Later, the Federal Aviation Administration confirmed that all the messages were registered at the same time, 23 hours and 39 minutes, and officially named lights of satellites. The pilots were recommended to avoid approaching them and flying in this area. But if these really were satellites, why was such an instruction given to the pilots? A resident of Dubai was filming unsettled weather on camera. A storm was beginning when something completely unexpected burst into his camera. Lightning flashed, and it suddenly illuminated in the sky the contour of a massive triangular figure, which hung high without movement. The motionless, huge object, according to preliminary estimates, could reach in width up to 200 meters. The object looked ideally camouflaged against the background of the night sky, and it showed itself only for a fraction of a second, when the lightning illuminated everything around. If it were not for the discharge, no one would have ever noticed it. The object did not move, did not blink, and did not make a sound. It silently observed the city below. This time, the material filmed by the eyewitness was not blurry or trembling. The camera captured something clear and alarmingly convincing. A resident of Florida uploaded a video filmed in the neighborhood with his area. The object has a distinct triangular shape with a strange glow. Its lights are located along the edges. What is even more alerting is the low altitude. So close it ended up being. For a moment, the man had a feeling that this apparatus could land at any second. But, fortunately, this did not happen. The triangle slowly disappeared in the clouds, leaving after itself questions without answers and a multitude of frightened people. The user who published this clip wished to remain incognito. From the first seconds, it seems that the frames were filmed on a quiet parking lot. But as soon as the camera zooms in on the horizon line, it seems that a massive figure is descending there. Slowly, methodically, controllably, exactly as airplanes perform a landing on a runway. Skeptics wrote exactly that it was simply an airplane shrouded in vapors that distorted its contours. But we do not see signs of an airport nearby. A local resident in Mexico was returning home at dusk. When he was driving past the airport, he noticed something from which he immediately felt uneasy. A gigantic disc-shaped object hovered in the air above the territory. The man stopped and began to film it on the camera of his telephone. That which happened next shook him to the depths of his soul. The object slowly moved in the direction of the airport, positioned itself above a hangar, and began to descend until it disappeared inside. When the person tried to approach, security stopped him. Later, the authorities denied that any airplane or object landed at that place. These frames with the catastrophe of an unidentified flying object excited the entire internet. Everything began in the year 2024, when an anonymous user uploaded this video onto Twitter. The person declared that the filmed material shows an unidentified flying object falling in the area of the Atlantic. But the story did not end on this. The anonymous person continued to accuse the American military of concealing the entire incident, asserting that official persons quickly confiscated all information before it had time to spread. Since no official details were made public, rumors only grew and became more alarming. According to numerous online sources, the fallen, unidentified flying object is now located under the guard of the military, and they are waiting for a reaction from those to whom it belonged. And if this is the truth, we can expect anything whatsoever. The first thing that people say when reporting about their observations of unidentified flying objects: "You will think that I am crazy." But if you are piloting an airplane and you see how on the path something in the blink of an eye moved from right to left and then blinked with a bright light 3-4 times, you of course will report to the dispatcher. Everything is not in order in the sky. Let us consider this incident on board the flight of the airline JetBlue, when the pilot reported about the movement of some objects with the speed of a flash. In a fraction of a second, they moved a great distance. This happened so fast that the pilot could not even understand what he saw. He described in detail the trajectory of movement of the foreign objects. This was not one random flash, but exactly a presence. Then, another recording appeared. It was reported about a second incident over open waters, when the pilots of the Emergency Medical Service and the Coast Guard became witnesses of movement over the ocean. Something was moving at supersonic speed. Now cameras record everything, and it is impossible to brush off these observations as simple illusions. Frames continue to leak from Area 51. This video can be a confirmation of a multitude of rumors that are connected with this place. It seems we have here a huge crane lifting something similar to an unidentified flying object. Several people are standing nearby, most likely controlling the operation. These frames were uploaded by a person who asserts that he himself became a witness of these unusual events in that area at the end of the 90s. And yes, in an era when artificial intelligence makes trust in everything that you see difficult, skepticism is quite justified. But in fact, Area 51 has been surrounded by mystery and contradictions throughout decades. Therefore, even this one story is enough to believe. Experiments with unidentified flying objects existed. Who knows, maybe now they have stepped far forward. Unlike official sources, which close their eyes to the frequent encounters with unidentified flying objects, enthusiasts of independent research actively step forward with declarations. One of them shook the ufological community. An independent expert shared a video recording, which, as he asserts, relates to the year 1979. The video was filmed in Colorado, not far from the mountain Archuleta Mesa. A massive flying apparatus in the shape of a saucer rests there inside a deep excavation. According to his words, this place was exactly the secret underground base Dulce, similar to Area 51, which is located exactly 500 miles from it. But the researcher asserted that the object was not built there, but was discovered during excavations. Supposedly, the ship lay under the earth for millions of years. This detail again awakens the alarming idea that alien guests possibly were the first inhabitants and visitors on the earth long before the appearance of humans. What thoughts do you have on this account? They say that this clip was filmed on the territory of the famous Area 51 in Nevada, and at first we observed nothing unusual. The military men are fulfilling their routine work, and only a little later something strange appears in the frame. A little humanoid figure somehow squeezed in among them, not causing a reaction of surprise or panic. Apparently, everyone here is already accustomed to this. The figure busily strolled as if it felt itself there in its own place. Soon after the appearance of this video, social networks exploded with theories. Many considered that the ordinariness of the frame speaks not of a discovery, but of a long-standing cooperation between the military of the United States and extraterrestrial creatures. But here's the question: how did they manage to achieve mutual understanding, and why are they cooperating? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you call it an absurdity, the hypothesis that governments and military forces do not come into contact and do not try to cooperate with aliens, then first look at this plot. In the first episode, 2 helicopters are flying next to an unidentified flying apparatus. This does not look like a chase. Rather, the flight looks like a coordinated escort. This might convince some that humans and aliens, possibly, are already working together. But the second video clip tells another story. This time, a pursuit is clearly visible. We see an unidentified object, which is closely followed by 2 airplanes. The movement is tense, it is controlled, and even from the side, seems far from cooperation. So what will you say? Are these ships escorting or intercepting? Do you remember the story about the alien in Las Vegas, filmed by a surveillance camera? There is yet another plot from a police surveillance camera, which, supposedly, recorded the emergency landing of an unidentified flying object onto the Earth. On this recording is shown another angle of the same incident, and it surfaced only recently. The person who recorded this says that he simply went out onto the street and saw how a strange blue light illuminated the night sky. This continued for only a moment, then disappeared, as if the flying object disintegrated or fell. What is interesting is how closely this plot resembles the more famous one, filmed by a police camera. The speech is not about connecting the 2 clips. I do not even ask you to believe in some specific theory. But when we find several recordings from different angles that show us similar facts, we cannot accuse everyone of hoaxes. Is that not so? In the year 2023, a resident of Denver was returning home late in the evening when something in the sky forced him to grow cold from horror. Above the roofs hovered a massive disc-shaped object, softly glowing, as if illuminated from the inside. The man pulled out his telephone and began to film. The object remained completely motionless, and an alert silence spilled in the air. Then, a narrow ray of light from this disc descended to the ground and began to slowly pulsate, as if scanning the ground. When the video recording got onto the internet, stormy debates immediately began. Many converged on the opinion that that unidentified flying object was not similar to any known flying apparatus. Respectively, if we go by the method of exclusion, it did not belong to earthly transportation vehicles, but most likely was an alien spaceship. These frames were filmed by a surveillance camera in Missouri. That resident who shared the clip published it on the network and asked the internet community to give explanations. Naturally, many immediately called the phenomenon an alien ship. One user even stepped forward with a more clear description of the same incident. And here something more strange appeared in the plot. Instead of only one flying object, the presence in the frame of a multitude of humanoid figures was discussed. They moved across the sky, presumably, as a whole group. Some believe that these could have been aliens who came out into earthly space, like divers. In any case, a rational explanation must be found for everything. A resident was walking his dog on the hills of the Falkland Islands when he recorded a supposed encounter with an unidentified flying object. In the beginning, he was simply filming how they were playing with the dog, and when he returned home, he decided to edit a funny video clip. But as soon as he rewatched the recording, he was dumbfounded. In one of the moments, it is visible how an incomprehensible object approaches from afar. It performed an unusual maneuver similar to a turnaround, then leveled out and continued movement forward. According to the words of those who viewed these frames, they were some of the most literal and convincing proofs of the observation of an unidentified flying object. How do you consider, is the filming authentic, or is this a fake? A man posted a short clip that quickly attracted the attention of the whole world. In an unknown place, dark clouds suddenly lit up with massive flashes of light. They flashed and collided, as if an intensive battle was happening in the sky. The character of the flashes was not similar to natural ones. The event itself seemed unnatural. The author of the video asserted that he observed some kind of aerial conflict and insisted that he recorded several clips on that night. It is not surprising that soon after this, the additional videos disappeared from his account, leaving this single clip. A driver of a truck in Highland, state of Illinois, noticed an intensive light in the sky in the northeast. An unknown object slowly drifted above the road, not having wings and not producing any sound. The eyewitness contacted the local police in order to report about his observation. His call was not ignored. It is noteworthy that soon after this, people in nearby towns noticed the same object. The police set out observers. They described the unidentified flying object as a huge triangular flying apparatus. When someone tried to track it, the object quietly disappeared behind the line of trees, and it did not simply disappear. In those few seconds, while the officer decided to check whether the video was recorded, the object moved by at least 1 mile, if not further. In total, 6 witnesses confirmed the observation, 5 of whom were employees of the law enforcement organs. Panic began in the northeast of China, when people in the province of Hongjian noticed how something was falling from the sky. Residents told that they saw several burning fragments that were flying to the ground, and then a loud piercing sound resounded, from which the surroundings trembled. For a moment, no one understood what was happening. Then, the inhabitants of the village discovered a large spherical object. It lay on an open area. The district mass media even assumed the probability of an invasion of aliens. But the authorities clarified the situation, declaring that this was some kind of space garbage that caught fire upon entering the atmosphere of the Earth and fell. But for the people who saw this with their own eyes, the explanation did not seem convincing, and they called it yet another official attempt to hide the truth. The European Organization for Nuclear Research is one of the largest and most respected centers of scientific research in the world. While it was opening information about its research of ghost particles and about how to discover them, a more strange occurrence happened, which is connected with this organization. Witnesses asserted that a mysterious portal suddenly appeared in the air next to the laboratory. In other words, the heavens opened and almost immediately, the weather sharply changed. Naturally, this caused active discussions. People began to connect the unusual event with the experiments of the European Organization for Nuclear Research, believing that an installation capable of sharply influencing the atmosphere was created by them. The video quickly spread on the network, where it caused even greater amazement and debates. During an ordinary game of volleyball on the beach of Miami, one of the players went for the ball and noticed in the sand an unusual object. The rest came closer. Someone began to film. On the ground lay a small body, partially sprinkled with sand. Most of all, the attention was attracted by the feet, long, narrow toes, and sharp, similar to claws nails. The camera approached the find, showing the details, which combined poorly with the ordinary remains of a marine animal. Later, some connected this place with the stories about a strange landing of an object on the same beach several weeks earlier. At the coast of Galicia in Spain, a fishing boat was filming the sky when into the frame entered a fast, round object. It moved over the sea, and behind at a distance walked two fighter jets. At first, the scene is similar to an ordinary pursuit, but the object kept itself in front without visible effort. Then, it abruptly changed direction and went down, directly to the ocean. The camera managed to catch the moment when the vehicle enters the water and leaves a small splash. The fighter jets flew over the place, but the sea almost immediately returned to the ordinary look. The question here is not even in what exactly was flying. Workers on a marine oil platform noticed in the daytime sky two dark disc-shaped objects. They walked over the ocean on an even course, and behind them followed two F-22 fighter jets. At the discs, there was visible neither an exhaust nor wings, nor any elements which would explain such a flight. At the same time, they did not chaotically slip away, but calmly kept themselves in front, as if the speed of military aviation did not represent a special problem for them. The people on the platform filmed everything with a clear shock in the voice. At night in the Brazilian João Pessoa, a man went out to the balcony of an apartment with a view of the beach and noticed over the ocean several bright lights. They moved as a group and directed downward narrow beams, which glided along the surface of the water. The camera caught how the lights slowly walk across the night sky at the shore, not losing their mutual arrangement. This looked not like a festive illumination and not like ordinary airplanes. The beams as if combed the sea, and the objects themselves remained high and almost noiselessly moved further. The recording ends while the light still is walking over the ocean. A man had just parked the automobile near the coastline when in the sky he noticed several bright spheres. They moved quickly, changed direction, and as if crossed the trajectories of each other. He pulled out the telephone and began to film, while the lights circled in the darkness. Some flew almost straight, others abruptly went to the side, then returned into the common zone. Such movement is difficult to compare with airplanes or small lanterns. Too fast turns, too short pauses, too lively dynamics. After several seconds, the orbs began to disperse further from each other. Late at night near a large lake, people raised their heads because of a long line of lights in the sky. The glowing dots walked as a free group, but in one direction, passing over the water and the lights of the city. Someone turned on the camera, and on the recording it is visible how the chain continues movement without abrupt changes. In the epoch of satellites and drones, such frames are easy to explain, and sometimes this explanation is indeed correct. But the witnesses were alarmed by another thing. The area had already been connected with reports about unusual observations, and the new line of lights became a part of a general alarming picture. Late at night in Key Largo, the state of Florida, a man walked along the beach and noticed on a large stone at the water a silhouette. At first it could seem as a human who was sitting and looking at the ocean, but in the weak light, the figure looked too thin and pale. The eyewitness stopped at a distance and began to film. The creature was sitting, hunched over, almost not moving, and the waves calmly approached the shore nearby. In such scenes, it is not the action that frightens, but the motionlessness. If this is a human, why does he look so strange? Workers next to marine oil platforms noticed on the surface of the ocean a huge circle. The water inside it began to slowly rotate, and the waves began to bend to the center. Gradually, the funnel expanded, and the middle darkened more strongly than the surrounding sea. The platforms and boats around remained in place. Therefore, the scale of the phenomenon was well noticeable. Does this look like an ordinary current? Possibly. But the shape looked too correct, and the movement too local. Some specialists assumed that under the water, there could be situated something, creating the rotation. Two underwater hunters were filming a dive when next to them dashed past a small metallic sphere. It entered the frame suddenly and moved with such speed that at first it can be taken for a fish or a bubble, but the shape was too even, almost ideally round, and the behavior too abrupt. The sphere several times changed direction with fast, angular maneuvers, which combined poorly with the ordinary movement of a marine animal. The bubbles from the divers calmly rose upward, and the object darted in the thickness of the water, as if someone controlled it. During an early walk along the beach in the French Wimereux, a man noticed a small, bright light, flying very low over the sea. It moved not like an airplane, too close to the surface, too fast, and too evenly. The eyewitness managed to take out the telephone, and in the frame it is visible how the glowing dot crosses the open space over the water almost in a straight line. For a second, the object became brighter, then muffled, but did not lose speed. Not any splash, not any smoke, not any sound, which usually betrays equipment. On a remote island, a tourist noticed movement among the deserted landscape and began to film from afar. In the frame appeared tall, pale figures with an unusual shape of the head. They relocated slowly, but not chaotically, as if they inspected the locality. The recording is short, the details are blurred by the distance, and exactly therefore around it immediately flared up a dispute. Official explanations appeared quickly. An error of perception, people in suits, an ordinary play of light. But the spectators did not calm down. The proportions looked too strange, too inappropriate. The very appearance of these creatures in such a place. Early in the morning, a patrol vessel of the naval forces of the United States of America recorded unusual activity over the open water. The cameras caught a dark object of a triangular disc shape, hovering directly over the surface of the ocean. It almost did not move for several seconds, demonstrating a smooth, even contour. Then, the object slowly descended, touched the water, and went under the surface, leaving behind itself neither debris, nor long bubbles, nor a noticeable trace. Later, the military inspected the area, but found nothing. A cliff over the sea, a wide view, calm water below. A man was filming a beautiful landscape, until in the sky appeared a bright dot. The object quickly crossed the frame, and the camera attempted to zoom in the image. By shape, it seemed round and reflected the solar light. Then, it abruptly tilted down and went straight to the ocean. After several seconds, the object entered the water at a high speed, having raised a powerful splash. The waves diverged in circles, but soon the surface became almost ordinary. This could be a meteorite, a fragment of equipment, or something else. A scuba diver with a lantern slowly walked along the marine bottom, when the light snatched out from the darkness a large structure. It looked not like a rock and not like a sunken ship, but like a wide, motionless object, reminding of a futuristic construction. Along separate sections of the surface were visible dim lights. On one side showed through an opening, similar to an entrance. Fishes calmly passed by next to it, as if this construction had long ago become a part of the underwater landscape. The diver approached, led the camera along the external surface, and then began to move back. During a deep water dive in the area of the Mariana Trench, cameras recorded a large disc-shaped object on the bottom. In the light of the searchlights, the structure looked old, partially covered with sand and covered with marine growths. Nearby, under the disc, allegedly lay the remains of a figure, similar to a humanoid. Everything was covered with a coating of time, as if it had been situated there not days and not months, but many years. The divers slowly went around the object, trying to film the full contour of the supposed vehicle. Later, the coordinates of the place were transmitted for further study. On a remote island resort at night, a man went out to the coastline and noticed a bright object over the ocean. This was not a blinking airplane, and not the lights of a boat. One even dot of light moved from one edge of the horizon to another. It did not disintegrate into parts, did not change color, and did not make spectacular maneuvers. But in its calmness, there also was the strangeness. The object kept a constant speed, as if it walked along a beforehand laid trajectory over the water. Around, only the dark ocean, the silence of the resort, and a telephone camera, which attempts to hold the light in the frame. In May of the year 2021, a group of researchers flying over the Southern Ocean allegedly saw how from under the surface rises a metallic disc-shaped object. It came out almost vertically, and the water quickly flowed down from the smooth hull. When the vehicle completely found itself over the waves, it for a short time hovered, as if it checked the position in the air. Then the hull changed orientation, transitioned into a horizontal position, and began to move away from the helicopter. The most surprising thing, the sea under it quickly calmed down as if nothing had happened. If the talk were about an ordinary vessel or debris, the water would behave differently. Passengers of a cruise vessel in the evening noticed a strange light in the water next to the board. Someone pointed a telephone down, and under the surface manifested a bright blue shape. It moved slowly, kept itself sufficiently close to the ship, and shone through the waves with a soft halo. The outlines seemed rounded and smooth, as if under the water walked a small vehicle, not wishing to float up. People looked from above, trying to understand whether they see a marine creature, equipment, or a rare luminescence of plankton. But the object kept itself next to the liner too confidently, as if it accompanied it. Another diver noticed on the marine bottom a wide round shape. Having come closer, he saw an object similar to a large plate, partially immersed into the soil. The surface was rusty, worn, as if the metal had lain for a long time in the salty water. The central part looked empty, without noticeable equipment, and small fishes freely swam through the holes. The camera slowly went around the construction, showing the full contour. Maybe this is a fragment of an old mechanism. Maybe a part of a vessel. Passengers of a small boat at Atlantic Beach in North Carolina noticed on the surface of the water a huge, dark object. It was smooth and rounded, almost like a giant black egg, lying among the waves. The vessel slowed down and someone began to film. The sphere was not tied with ropes. Nearby there were not visible other boats or equipment. The waves flowed around it, and the surface reflected the sky with a muffled shine. It simply was situated there, silently and motionlessly, in the middle of the water. On one of the quiet Hawaiian beaches early in the morning, they discovered a small metallic disc lying right on the sand. At night, the locals allegedly reported about a strange object that fell from the sky, and by dawn, the territory already looked completely not like a place for recreation. To the shore drove up automobiles. From them came out people in protective suits and, without unnecessary fuss, directed themselves to the find. They inspected the surface, carefully lifted the object, loaded it into the automobile, and quickly left the beach. Neither a press conference, nor explanations, nor a sign, exercises. In July of the year 2025, over the ocean at the shores of South Africa, they recorded several glowing dots. They walked high in the night sky, kept themselves separately, but moved in one direction. Not a single fire blinked like an ordinary airplane. The brightness remained even. The distance between the objects almost did not change, and the whole group looked so as if it flew along a common route. For a skeptic, this can be a satellite chain or distant aviation. The crew of a military ship in the Atlantic Ocean filmed a moment from which it is difficult to take away the gaze. The water in front of the vessel began to rise. Then from it slowly showed itself a huge metallic construction. The object looked wide and massive, as if under the surface hid a whole vehicle. Streams of water flowed down from the sides, falling back into the ocean, and the hull continued to come out higher. On the recording, this is similar not to a floated-up debris, but to a giant ship, which for too long was situated there, where we do not see anything. Then, the object began to rise into the sky, and the water from it poured down like rain. A research team was studying the deep waters at Sanriku in Japan with the help of a remote underwater robot. The camera was directed to the marine bottom, where slowly moved animals and suspended particles. Suddenly, in the background, flew by a bright object. This was not a smooth dot, but a glowing streak, crossing the darkness in a fraction of a second. It passed almost in a straight line and disappeared before the operator managed to react. The robot continued to film the empty water, where just now something flashed past. The Team Ocean X was researching the bottom of the Baltic Sea when the sonar showed a strange round formation. Upon diving, the camera saw a wide disc-shaped object on the marine bottom with a flat upper part and raised edges. The surface was covered with sand and marine growths, but the general shape stood out on the background of the surrounding relief. The divers passed around, illuminating the details, and the more they filmed, the less the object resembled an accidental stone. About it, they argue until now: geology, debris, an ancient structure, or something more unusual. A tourist was walking along the beach when he saw on the sand an item of an unusual shape. It had sharp angles and facets, completely not similar to stones, shells, or thrown-out garbage. The man hid behind the rocky part of the shore and began to film. For several seconds, the object remained motionless. Then it slowly rose from the sand and went vertically upward. It hovered over the beach, as if checking the space around, and then disappeared from the frame. If this was a drone, where are the propellers? If a model, who was controlling it? Early in the morning at the coast of Los Angeles, a camera caught an object, which looked too neat for an accidental glare. Over the very line of the water hung a smooth, glowing shape, almost ideally round, like a classic flying saucer from the old tales of eyewitnesses. It did not dart about, did not fall, and did not attempt to hide. On the contrary, the object kept one altitude and slowly glided along the shore, as if it checked the edge of the ocean. The strangest thing, the complete absence of visible wings, tail, noise, or abrupt maneuvers. Tourists were filming the green slopes near the River Salmon in Idaho and probably counted on bringing home a beautiful video clip about nature. But at some moment from behind the hills came out at once several metallic discs. They did not simply flash past in the frame. The objects appeared as a group, reflected the sun with smooth surfaces, and began to change direction, so as if between them was an invisible command. The discs kept an identical distance, for a short while described an arc over the peaks, and went into the open sky. If these are birds, then they are too even. If garbage, too organized. On the shore of the quiet Lake Huancacocha in Peru, 3 friends were throwing stones into the water, and a 4th was filming them from the side. Everything looked like an ordinary walk: mountains, calm water, laughter, and an accidental home video. But the camera suddenly rose to the sky, because over the lake dashed a dome-shaped object. From below it seemed smooth and rounded, like an inverted bowl. For an instant it slowed down directly over the water, as if it hovered in the air, and then again gained speed and went away from the mountains. The further it went away, the smaller it became, until it dissolved on the background of the sky. People on a boat at the coast of Sweden noticed under the water a round object, which moved next to them. The sphere was visible through the transparent water and looked smooth, even, as if made from one solid material. It kept almost one depth, passed near the buoys, and changed direction without abrupt splashes. Not any tail, fins, or traces, which could betray an animal. The camera for several seconds followed the object while it walked next to the vessel. A man stood on a bridge in Barcelona and was photographing the water when he noticed below a large round structure. Upon the zooming of the camera, it became visible that the object lies on the bottom and is partially covered with sand and rust. Its outlines resembled an old metallic disc, as if a large plate was immersed and forgotten in the shallow water. The light from the surface glided along the curved edges, emphasizing the shape. Explanations can be many: a fragment of a construction, a part of equipment, an abandoned object. But exactly the correct roundness makes the recording so catchy. The inhabitants of the houses at the beach in Praia Grande late at night noticed a strange light in the ocean. It was situated not far from the shore, but did not move together with the waves, and did not resemble a lantern on a boat. One of the eyewitnesses began to film, and on the frames is visible a steady radiance under the water. The most interesting thing happened later. On the next day, the people again checked the same place, and the weak light still was visible under the surface. During the day, when the majority of night illusions disappear, the object continued to shine through in the same point. If this is equipment, why was it not removed? If a natural phenomenon, why did it hold itself so exactly? Late at night in the harbor of Bristol, they noticed a glowing shape at the surface of the water. It had long, thin appendages, which softly moved around the body, and along the shape itself shimmered pale blue, green, and violet shades. On the one side, this could resemble an unusual marine creature. On the other, and the movements and the radiance looked so strange that the eyewitnesses did not immediately find the words. The reflections of the buildings trembled on the water, and the object slowly passed along the pier, as if it did not fear the light and the people. After several seconds, it went into a darker part of the harbor, and the camera lost it. Near a lake in a national park, eyewitnesses saw 3 bright spheres hovering over the water. They stood almost ideally in a row, with equal intervals, and did not flicker, like ordinary lights on a distant shore. Several seconds the spheres remained motionless, and then simultaneously began to move across the lake, preserving one speed. On the surface under them, barely noticeably reflected the luminescence, which made the scene even stranger. The objects seemed not simply dots on the sky, but something realistically situated over the water. Then, the formation rose a little higher and gradually disappeared. Late at night near a beach bar over the ocean, appeared a huge orange sphere. Over it hung a dense cloud, and the sphere itself kept itself right under it, bright and clear. It did not fly across the sky, did not fall, and did not change shape. It only slightly rose and lowered in a small range, as if it breathed. The ocean below reflected the soft orange luminescence. Therefore, the object was impossible to write off to a small lamp or an accidental small fire on the shore. After some time, the brightness began to decrease. The contour became weaker, and the sphere almost disappeared. During a deep water dive, a group of divers filmed a section of the bottom, similar to the ruins of an unknown settlement. From the sand rose tall shapes, standing close to each other, like buildings. Nearby lay round objects, resembling vehicles or capsules. The light of the lanterns passed between the structures. Fishes swam in the openings, and in the distant background, according to the words of the authors of the recording, flashed figures, similar to humanoids. The frame looks so incredibly that one wants to immediately call it a fantasy. On a remote island, tourists stumbled upon a strange scene in a grassy zone not far from the shore. One thin figure lay on the ground without movement. The second stood nearby and slowly turned the head and body, as if it attempted to understand where it is situated. The eyewitnesses filmed from a distance, not deciding to approach closer. The proportions of the creatures looked unaccustomedly. 2 thin bodies, 2 abrupt movements, too little similarity to ordinary people. The video clip breaks off quickly, but manages to show both figures. An old night recording of the year 2002 looks so as if it was accidentally taken out from a fantastic film, only it is filmed too roughly and unevenly. In an open field stands a dome-shaped vehicle. One side darkened, from it rises smoke. The surface seems damaged, like after a hard landing. But the main thing is situated next to the opening. On the ground, slowly moves a thin figure with long arms. It does not walk, rather pulls itself into the direction of the bushes, unnaturally and heavily. The camera keeps itself at a distance. Therefore, there are few details. But exactly this makes the scene unpleasantly convincing. If this is a staging, then made with rare endurance. Fishermen who were situated far from the shore saw over the waves a smooth, dome-shaped vehicle. It hung so low that it seemed a little more, and it will touch the water. The metallic surface reflected the daytime light, but on the hull there were noticeable neither propellers, nor nozzles, nor customary lights. At first, the object kept itself motionlessly, as if it studied the sea under itself. Then, without a jerk, it began to glide over the surface, preserving an identical altitude. For the fishermen, accustomed to the strangenesses of the weather and glares on the water, this clearly was not an ordinary spectacle. On a road in New Jersey, drivers began to brake and pull over to the side of the road. Over the highway hung a smooth, disc-shaped object. From below, it resembled a classic flying saucer, a rounded shape, not any wings, and almost absolute silence. Several people came out from the automobiles and began to film, because the object did not fly past, but exactly hung, holding one point in the sky. It did not rotate, did not tilt, and did not behave like a drone in the wind. After some time, the disc smoothly moved forward, preserving the altitude. A man was filming children in the shallow water of the beach Bondi when he noticed to the side a strange movement. The water was sufficiently transparent in order to see the sandy bottom, and along it, right under the surface, moved a small figure. It walked vertically on two legs. The body seemed thin, the head disproportionately large. Neither splashes nor struggle with the waves, nor attempts to float up. The object simply crossed the bottom, as if the shallow water was for it an ordinary road. The camera turned into its direction, but after several seconds, the figure went deeper, and the visibility disappeared. A man was riding on a hydrocycle at the coast in the evening, when over the water appeared a group of lights. They moved into the direction of the city line of the horizon, and kept themselves at an identical distance from each other. This was not similar to fireworks. Nothing scattered, did not fall, and did not flare up chaotically. The lights walked evenly, like a small squadron, but without the typical flickering of airplanes. A light haze blurred their contours, however did not hide the main thing. The formation was not broken. Early in the morning, fishermen on a large vessel noticed ahead a strange shape. Over the surface of the water stood a tall, elongated object, similar to a dirigible, placed vertically. It did not drift together with the waves, and did not look like a buoy. Too smooth, too massive, and too motionless. When the boat slowed down, one of the men began to film. Several seconds, the object kept itself in place, as if it was secured in the air over the water. The fishermen did not begin to approach, and this is perhaps the most reasonable reaction. Well, friends, on this note, our long episode comes to an end. If you liked it and you want to watch something else interesting on our channel, then subscribe to the channel and write something good in the comments for the promotion of this video. By the way, you can write the keyword rocket in the comments. That is how I will know that you watched until the very end. Thank you all very much for viewing, and next, watch one of the two appeared videos on your screen. They are insanely interesting.